Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Let me ask you this. Are you under pressure? Because if I'm being honest, I am. There are some days I feel incredibly overwhelmed. A few weeks ago, I looked at my husband and told him my list for the week, all the things I needed to get done, and he just paused and said, "Wow, that's a lot." My immediate thought was, well, yeah, it's a lot, and I'm stressed. It's too much. I'm one person. I can't do all of this. And I don't know if that sounds familiar to you, but I have a feeling it might, because it's not just one thing, right? It's everything. It's wanting to run your home well, feed your kids healthy meals, not rely on eating out too much, being present, playing with your kids, but also teaching them, discipling them, keep the house clean, invest in your marriage. The laundry never ends. Stay connected with friends and family, and somewhere in all of that, not completely lose yourself. And it's a lot, y'all. It's a lot.
It is. And if I had a dime for all the times that I have felt overwhelmed with all that's on our plate, I mean, I would be a rich woman. Okay. Okay. I would be rich if I had a dime for every time I said that. But life with 4 kids for our family is just a lot. We have homeschool for one child. We have one child in public school. And then I have 2 non-school age children to keep entertained while juggling all the other things. And we spend a lot of time in the car Monday through Friday transporting my child that goes to public school back and forth. But we also spend a lot of time at home doing school. I spend a lot of time during the week cooking meals and fixing snacks, even though I'm contemplating cutting out snacks because my kids are not hungry for the meals. Anyways, the endless battle, 1 week, whatever.
Yes.
And I just spend a lot of time in the margin of my day, like throwing a load of laundry in, taking a load of laundry out, washing one dish here, washing one dish there, vacuuming this one room or cleaning a toilet or a sink, or I'm going to cut the grass of the front yard today. The list could go on and on and on. But the biggest thing is that it never stops. It doesn't just one day forever be done. And my life, even with the bare minimum on our plate, it's still going to be busy because we have a family of 6 and all of our children are very close in age. And it's just hard and it's definitely overwhelming sometimes. So I think the bigger question is, if life is going to be busy for you and for me, how can you live life in a way that honors God in all that we say, think, and do in these seasons of busy and feeling overwhelmed?
And I think, just like you said, is even if a lot of those things stopped, we'd still be busy. And I think no matter who I've spoken to, no matter what age they're at or stage of life they're in, that's such a common thing to hear, is like, we're just busy. I'm just busy. That's just, I think it's something that we will always have in our lives. And so being able to talk about this and say, okay, Lord, what do you have for us in this life? And in this world that we're living in that is busy. And something someone said to me recently completely shifted my perspective. And I don't even remember who said it. So whoever you were, thank you. It could have been you, Tara. I don't know. But they said, the pressure that you are feeling is not from God. And it stopped me in my tracks, because I had to ask myself, if it's not from Him, where is it coming from? And the answer to that is everywhere else, from the world, social media, unspoken expectations we put on ourselves, comparison, even well-meaning voices around us. And we start to believe that there's this invisible standard that we're supposed to meet, that we're supposed to do more, be more, carry more. But the truth is, we were never designed for that kind of pressure.
Yes. I mean, it's a good thought that person has. I'm not going to claim that I said that because I don't remember saying that if I did, but whoever did say it, that is a really good statement. And I think a good question too is, how much of what you're doing feels overwhelming because you put it on your plate instead of God putting it on your plate. For instance, we're in the thick of sports season right now for our boys, and we don't play year-round sports. We do not do travel sports. We do not do, We are very selective of when we do it, and it's definitely not all year, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
not every season. And but thinking through that, it's like just some questions for thought. Do you want your kid to play that sport because they want to, or is it because you want them to? Is it
Yeah.
because you want them to help develop their character, or do you want your kid to be on that sports team because they're a little girl, and like every girl is going to dance, every girl is going to be a cheerleader, every girl is going to play
Mhm.
softball, fill in the blank.
Sure.
Another thought is like, again, feeling overwhelmed. Do you drain your savings to go on a family vacation to Disney or the mountains or the beach or fill in the blank, just because all of the other families around you are having these awesome, amazing, picturesque family vacations?
Oh, that's
So,
good. Yeah.
so, should we, despite the financial impact that it may have on our family as a whole after that trip? But you can feel overwhelmed by, again, looking at others and looking what the world is doing and think, well, I need to be
Comparing.
doing that too. Right. Here's another one that we, can sometimes do. We go out to eat after church every Sunday, just because all the other families do? Or do we eat at home because our family can only really budget and afford to go out once a month after church on Sunday? Maybe there's going to be a season where we can't afford to, go out every Sunday and take another family and pay for their meal. That's our desire, but that may not be where we're at right now. And so I think all of these scenarios, I mean, we could go on and on and on. But a lot of the pressure, like you said, that we place on ourselves and that we can place on our families is just relating to wanting to have what others have, which is
Yep.
coveting.
Yeah.
We covet an experience, what others are experiencing or their kids are experiencing or what their job is giving them or what their marriage is giving them. We covet that and we want to experience it too. Or we
Mhm.
see what others are enjoying and we want to enjoy what they're enjoying. I think sometimes we convince ourselves that we deserve this. We deserve this family
Yeah.
vacation, or what, we need this family vacation. I
Mhm.
know, like, you
Strong
know,
words.
right, or we won't thrive, or my kid won't quote unquote thrive if we don't do this, if I don't push them to do this. But what
Mhm.
our kids need and what our family needs will be specific to each individual family. It won't look like what every other family is doing. All of our children are different. All of our husbands are different. All of our marriages are different. And so, our sports or family vacations or eating out, are those good things? Yeah, they are. They're great. But are they good things at the expense of pushing our kids beyond the limits that God intended for them at that age? Are they
Mhm.
good if we have a great time on that family vacation, but now our bank account is affected for months and there's now marital strife because of the financial stress? Are they good if we went out to eat every Sunday, but now we have to sacrifice in other areas in our family budget to scrape by? We can want and we can experience and we can enjoy creation the way God intended to, without all of this worldly pressure to do the things the world's way, and do all the things knowing that our ultimate want and our ultimate experience and ultimate enjoyment is in Christ and Christ alone.
Yeah, when you strip everything back, the question that comes to my mind is, what does God actually ask of us? And I had a sweet friend who called me a few weeks ago to tell me she couldn't do something. She was really emotional about it. And she was like, I hate to say no, but I feel like I have so much on my plate and I feel so overwhelmed. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Do not feel bad to say no if this is something that you need to say no to.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're using discernment to know, hey, this is something that cannot handle on my plate right now. And one thing I had told her was, what does God ask of you? What
Mm-hmm.
does He ask of you when you wake up every day? Not perfection, not performance, not a perfectly run home and a never ending to do list that's completed, but He asks for obedience.
Mm-hmm.
He asks for daily, simple, faithful obedience to seek Him, walk with Him, love others, point people to Jesus with our lives. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, everything we do is through the strength of the Holy Spirit. But even then, we are still human. We still have limits.
That's right.
And sometimes we're doing too much, and yet we still feel like it's not enough. And when we feel that way, that is a huge sign, red flag, pointing arrows. Something's off. Something is not the way that God intended it to be, if that's how we feel.
That's right. Yeah, and I've been there. I've been in that boat multiple times.
Yeah.
I have the tendency to bite off more than I can chew. And so God has used a lot of things to teach me in that boat. And I keep
Yeah.
going in that boat sometimes. But I love that song from Frozen 2.
Oh,
Sorry, spoiler alert, you haven't seen it. When
been out a long time. They've
I
had
know,
time.
sorry. There's probably Frozen 3 about to come out. I don't know. But when Anna has just lost Elsa and she sings a song called The Next Right Thing, do the next right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie, it's not a Christian biblical movie at all. So please hear me when I say, I'm not saying everybody go watch this. There's a song in that movie that statement of doing the next right thing is sometimes what I repeat over and over from a biblical perspective. Like I will sing
Right.
that in my head. In this moment of hard chaos and feeling overwhelmed, how can I honor God and do the next right thing as a woman of integrity with self-control who is full of grace and willing to let God direct me and not me grab the wheel and point the ship where I think we're supposed to go.
Yeah.
This is for our family. This is our very first season where we have two sons playing baseball at the same time in two different baseball parks. And so one is in kid pitch for the first time, one is in t-ball for the first time, which are two really awesome things to experience. But this season has definitely been difficult to manage and honestly very tough to get through. And
Mm-hmm.
we are living on a day-to-day provision for our manna from the Lord.
Yeah.
And I have realized that despite how busy it can be, juggling practices and games, that we can use this season of baseball to make connections with these lost families on our team and for our kids to build these friendships with other kids on the team who don't know any other Christians.
Yeah.
And even the amount of time of transit in the car, again, listening and discipling our children, listening to them, doing solid biblical teaching and listening to God's word and practicing memory verses, while we're going back and forth from the ballpark. And we've just learned we have to be very intentional with our conversations with our kids and helping them develop during these overwhelming times that we have as a family and even
Right.
the hardship they may face, like they struck out or they didn't perform as well. And, teaching them to always honor their coaches and God by listening and being teachable and building their teammates up, even if their performance isn't good. And, we've got 3 boys and 1 girl, and more than likely sports are going to be a part of our lives. And sports in and of themselves, they're not a bad thing. But allowing your child to play a sport, there has to be boundaries in place and there has to be time spent planning and how to nurture and love and disciple your children, all the while assuring them that their identity is not in their performance, it's not in their position in the sport, and it's not in their playtime. Their identity is rooted in Christ, and playing this sport is an opportunity to be the light of Christ to others on whatever team they're on. And this could go for anything. This could go for hockey. This could go for, your child's in the band. This could go for your child does jiu-jitsu, or even yourself. Like your identity isn't in whatever you're feeling overwhelmed in, but remember that your identity is rooted in Christ. And how can you do the next right thing in whatever God has you doing in that moment for him?
I love that. We're going to go ahead and look at just a few moments in scripture where people either carried pressure that they weren't meant to or they got distracted by it. So we're going to talk about Martha, Luke 10:38-42. Martha is busy serving, doing all the right things, but she's overwhelmed and frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet. And Jesus gently tells Martha, "You are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary." Martha wasn't wrong for serving. She was just carrying pressure that pulled her away from what mattered most.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Moses in Exodus 18, Moses tried to carry the weight of leading and judging all the people by himself, and it wasn't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
His father-in-law Jethro steps in and basically says, this is too much for you. You cannot do it alone. So even someone chosen by God needed help and had limits.
Yes.
And then we see Saul, 1 Samuel 13. Saul felt pressured to act quickly and take control instead of waiting on God. And because of that pressure, he disobeyed. So pressure often pushes us into striving instead of trusting. That's what we can learn from Saul. And then Peter walks on water until he starts focusing on the wind and waves. So the pressure of the moment causes him to sink. So when we shift our focus from Jesus to everything around us, we feel overwhelmed fast. And all of this led me to realize something. A lot of pressure, I feel, is actually a distraction. It pulls me away from being present, walking with the Lord, loving the people right in front of me, because I'm too busy trying to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought up Moses leading the Israelite people and how much he had to manage.
Yeah.
I mean, millions of people, and he was doing it all by himself. We've been watching that show, The Promised Land.
So good. It is
I mean,
so
it's just
funny.
so. But if you guys like The Office or Parks and Rec styled humor, they have a Promised Land. I guess. I mean, what do you call it? Like a comedy? I don't
Yeah.
know. It,
Yeah. I mean, it's a
and
comedy.
it's on the Angel Studios, and it's Moses like in the wilderness with all the Israelites, and it's hilarious. We have really enjoyed it. I think you can find it on YouTube too.
Yeah, it's so fun because they will do the individual interviews like they do on The Office.
Yes,
But it's like Moses, and he's talking about the people, and he's like,
right.
well, they did this again,
Yeah, or they'll be doing something, you'll see Miriam like look at the camera like, can you believe they did, like it's
Yes.
real funny.
Yeah,
So,
they
but
have
anyways,
that character on there. There's one, and he's Egyptian, and he acts like when
yes.
when Moses parted the sea and they got
he
through.
made
He
it.
was the only Egyptian that made it.
Yes.
And so he just like pretended to be an Israelite.
Yeah, this
And
guy
he was like,
chases
I
him.
think I'm blending in so far. And it's just goodness.
Yeah, the guy's like, what tribe are you with? He's like, what tribe are you with? And he tells him, he goes, I'm in that tribe. And he's like, really? He's like, where do you live? And he's like, well, I'll walk you home first. He's like, well, let me walk you home. And it's just so funny. So all that to say, if you haven't seen The Promised Land, you will get a kick out of it. But there is an episode where it shows Moses, basically managing and giving these wisdom and discernment decisions for these, spite, conversations and relationships, different things going on. And he's helping them discern what to do. And Jethro's like, Moses, you can't do this. There's wise men under you. Like, find really wise leaders and let them do that small stuff and let the big stuff be brought to you. And like, he listened and he did what he was told to do, and he delegated. And so I think that it's just really neat. My D group just finished studying in depth the book of Exodus. And so, I just think there's wisdom for us in listening to older and wiser and more mature Christians in our life when they take a look and say, hey, what you're doing it is not good. And like, let me give you some, can't speak like, I'm thinking all the different words, but let me give you some suggestions of how, this could be better managed. Yeah. And, he did implement a system where all people could best be served and Moses would not burn out and God would be glorified. Sure. And I think there is wisdom sitting down, with your spouse and like, let's lay out a calendar on a weekly schedule. And let's say like, what is necessary that has to take place like this week or month? Like, it's a non-negotiable, like work, got to go to work, church, we go into church, and any other thing that's a non-negotiable. And then discuss what are some things that our family would like to do this week or this month, such as like a family vacation or the sports situation or when you'd like to eat out. And, I think sitting down and talking about how our finances, would be an event that would, what would be an event that could take away from fellowship with other believers? Would
Right.
what we're trying to do, is that going to put a strain on our marriage? And if so, how can we build in some safeguards to check in throughout the week and have intentional intimacy with one another?
Yeah.
Going to play dates and taking your kids to the library or the splash pad, or even all the bajillion birthday parties that we have to go to this time of the year, any time of the year,
Yeah.
and you get this dinner invite from friends, which are always so fun, and meetups at the park are always so good. But if you don't have any built-in time, first of all, with the Lord, time to be at home, fulfilling all those responsibilities that the Lord has given you as a wife, as a mother, as a homemaker, to take care of your home, then you may have to say no to some of these other things that are really good, but they might not be good at that time.
Sure.
When you're talking about what our job, is to love God and love people. And if you're
Yeah.
loving people, but neglecting to love God first and foremost, you might be doing a good thing, but you've totally left God out of it.
Yep. And that's not what he wants.
No.
I was going to read this. I told Tara before we got started. I had a conversation last night. Our family and several other families from the church all went to eat together. And one of the pastors had talked about him and his wife having this conversation about Hebrews 12, verses 1 and 2. And it says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God." And when he said, when they were reading it, one thing they were honing in on in their conversation was how the verse uses the words every weight and sin. So it separates the two.
Mm-hmm.
And they were focusing on, well, what does it mean? What does he mean by the word weight? And I was really struck by that because of this podcast we were going to be doing, and how I feel like the Lord has just brought this topic up so much over the last month or so. And it was like, we know what sin is. We know
Mm-hmm.
that sin is so clearly when we have disobeyed God.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all these other things that are good things, like we're talking about, that can become a weight
Mm-hmm.
and can become a burden on us. And that verse is telling us, if it's becoming a weight and it's becoming a burden, then we need to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Let us put it, it says, put aside every weight and sin, and let us run the race with endurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the book, I've not read the actual Pilgrim's Progress, but I've read the child's version
Mm-hmm.
of the Little Pilgrim's Big Journey.
Love that
And
series.
they have where Christian in the first book, he is trying to get to the cross. He is trying to get to Jesus. And he's got this big, heavy burden on his back. And in the book, it's like he's got this big boulder that he's carrying around. And when he finally makes it to the cross and it just falls off of him, that's such a beautiful illustration of what it is to accept Christ into your life and what he died for. He didn't die for us to be people who are still burdened by all these pressures of the world and by all the sin that we are tempted to struggle with every day. He did that so that we could be free in him and what he's done in his righteousness, not to live in shame. And it makes me so sad. I think, again, so many people can relate to this, but it seems like a lot of moms, a lot of people in the same season that we are in right now, especially feel that weight. And I feel like for me, that's been such a hard thing when I feel really overwhelmed or feel a ton of pressure on myself. Then I start to feel guilty and I start to feel ashamed because I think, this is the version of mom that my kids are getting and my kids are seeing. And I don't want that.
Right.
I want them to see a mom who is living in freedom
Yep.
because of what Christ has done for me. And I want to read this other verse, Matthew 11:28-30. It says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light."
Mm-hmm.
So if what I'm carrying feels crushing, it is probably not from Him. And like that other verse says, we need to lay it aside. We need to hone in and use discernment from the Holy Spirit on, okay, Lord, what do you want us to let go of?
Right. I think too, just to be careful here, that there are seasons that God will put us through trials. We know Job went through immense, heavy, overwhelming situations that he
Sure.
allowed Satan to tempt him. He allowed Satan to strip away any and all things that were any meaning to him except his wife.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, what was Job's heart posture towards God during the heaviness and the overwhelmed? And so I think there is self-inflicted pressure that
Sure.
is definitely because, like I said, we're putting things on our plate that God never intended
Yeah.
to be there. And I
Sure.
do think there are some things that God does put on our plate that are heavy, and may not be as joyful, and you do feel overwhelmed. But when he says that my burden is light, when he's talking about a yoke, he's talking about an ox. So
Yeah.
oxen used to carry these wooden things on their back, and usually
Yeah.
they had two.
Too.
And so Christ is saying, like, he's the ox next to us, and he basically has all the weight on him. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean the weight isn't there. The
Yeah.
weight is light to us because he is the one carrying
Carrying
it.
it.
So he doesn't necessarily strip us away from all things that are hard
Yeah.
or uncomfortable or that can seem heavy and difficult. And so
Right.
I just want to make that distinction of, someone may be in an overwhelming season. They may have just lost a loved one. They may have just gotten a
Yeah.
crazy medical diagnosis. They may have just had something crazy happen in a relationship or at their
Right.
job or whatever. And it may feel overwhelming of, like, all the decisions that need to be made, and what does my future look like now, and what is this path? And so, remember, that song, "Do the next right thing." We are to
Yeah.
be, God is faithful even when we are faithless.
Yeah.
And he's the one that's carrying that yoke. And it feels
Yeah.
easy because we're letting him carry it. It's when
Yeah.
we take it over and we try to say, "No, I got this, God," and we're picking up more of that weight, that it becomes unbearable and it does feel crushing. And it's when we're either, one, not letting him carry it at all, or we're
Yeah.
not trusting him to carry it at all.
For
But,
sure. And I will say too, I'm glad you said that, but I will say, one of the things that I think, especially with a lot of people our age, I feel like, or just that I've spoken to about this a lot, it really has been so much pressure that has been put on themselves,
right.
and,
Yes.
and
Yes.
not things that truly are like, this is totally out of my control. This is something that the Lord
Right.
truly is sovereign over,
Right.
and has allowed to
Yes.
happen, but
Yes.
more or less those everyday choices
Yeah.
that we have, that we put that pressure of having to have the perfect clean house and the
Yes, like the Leave It to Beaver,
perfect,
Brady
yeah,
Bunch, perfect
yeah.
home. Yes, yes.
I was reading this morning in the book of Ruth. That's what we're in for our D group right now, and that was one thing that I had focused on today, of like, what does this passage teach you about God? And I was just like, God is sovereign. Naomi is the portion of the story where Naomi is like, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for I
More.
am bitter because the
Mhm.
Almighty has taken everything from me.
Yeah.
But 4 times as she is saying, like, don't call me Naomi, call me bitter, all these bad things have happened. She says 4 different times, she says the Almighty did this, Almighty, Lord, Lord. So she's acknowledging his sovereignty over allowing those things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the very end of that verse, it says the barley harvest season had begun. And it's like, so you can still see that God's like, but my provision, I'm
Is
still
here.
providing. I'm still here. Oh, and by the
Right.
way, your daughter-in-law, Ruth, she's a gift I've given you too. Just you wait,
Right. That
you
she
know?
stayed.
So it's like,
Yeah.
even in those seasons of those really difficult things or out of our control things, or someone like Naomi, it's like, of course she felt bitter. She lost her husband. She lost her sons. She had to come back home and didn't
Mm-hmm.
know what to expect. Our human side, that makes total sense to feel that way, but to be able to take that step back and go, oh, but Lord, you are sovereign and you
Mm-hmm.
know what you're doing and we can trust you, and look at how beautiful that story becomes.
Right.
So anyways.
Right. Well, I think of Paul too. When Paul, he had a thorn in his
Yeah.
side, and scholars throughout history have
Yeah,
tried
we
to
don't
figure
know.
out what this thorn was. Was it a physical ailment? Was it a person in his life? Was it a situation that he literally came back to over and over again? And no one, even all the great biblical scholars of our time, never can pinpoint exactly what this thorn was. But we know that Paul asked God to remove it, and
Yeah.
God chose not to. And
Mm,
because of that, Paul said, your power is made perfect in my
mm,
weakness.
yes.
And so I think, for me personally, with the testimony going on, is that we have a child that is not neurotypical, and she's not going away. I'm not going to not be her mother. And so there are lots of moments that I feel overwhelmed, and even it's a struggle sometimes to fully delight in motherhood. And even several weeks ago, I fasted because I was at a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's so hard. It's so hard. Even though I knew, I'm like, God, you chose me to be this child's mother. You chose me and Jeremy to parent this child. You have given us the family dynamic that you have for a reason. And so, like, even like you said, like trusting that God is sovereign, even when life is heavy over something that is not going away, and is not necessarily like I can set it down, and walk
Sure,
away
right. You
from it.
can't lay it aside. Yeah.
I cannot. And so, but again, I think the heart posture behind some of the things that I can choose how or not I want to respond to the Lord's
That's
call in my
right.
life. I can
So
choose to be obedient and have self control and have patience, or I can choose to be harsh and choose to be all these other things. And so I think it boils back down to the same thing that you and I both have been talking about in this episode, is that we are to love God and we are to love people. And if that's not happening, if we're struggling to love people, then more than likely we are struggling to love God. And if we're
right.
struggling to love God, more than likely we need to evaluate our heart. And maybe we do need to fast. Maybe we do need to step away from social media. Maybe we do need to say no to everything that is asked of us this week just because we need a week at home, regardless of how wonderful the opportunity is.
Right.
I don't know what it is, but we have to evaluate that and be willing to be emptied of ourselves. And so I just wanted to say that as an encouragement to anyone. Again, everyone's situations are different, but that's just a personal, recent, overwhelming scenario of
Mm,
that I've personally been in, and am still working through with the Lord. But the Lord
sure.
is so gracious, and His mercy is new every morning, and He is steadfast, and He is sovereign. And so I cling to that all day long.
Yeah.
And the verses that you just read in Matthew just remind me that His strength a lot of days is the only thing that keeps me going.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing most days that brings me through. And I'm reminded when I feel like I'm drowning in motherhood, or if there's tension in my marriage, or if there's financial stress on our family, or literally you could fill in the blank, that if I'm doing all these things, but God is not at the center of all these things, then what's the point?
Yep.
And it makes me think of Colossians 3:17, whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him.
Mm,
So no matter what I'm doing, just like Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, or when you read about Peter who had his eyes fixed on Jesus walking across the water in the middle of a storm. I must do everything in him, through him, and for his glory.
So some questions that we can ask ourselves is, what do we do with this? What do we do with all of this? Maybe it starts with asking, what has God actually asked of me in this season? What expectations am I carrying that he never gave me? Where do I need to let something go? Because we cannot do everything. We were never meant to do everything. And if you're feeling overwhelmed today, or if your list feels too long, if you feel like you are constantly behind, as we say often on our podcast, you are
are
not
not
alone.
alone.
But more importantly, you are not called to carry all of that. So let's lay down the pressure that isn't from God and return to simple, faithful obedience one day at a time.
I think just start with what is necessary. Evaluate all the extra.
Yep.
And it's going to change in different seasons. But no matter the season or the week that you have ahead, how can God be in the center of all things and receive glory for all things? And if he's not, then rearrange it so that he will.
Yeah.
And if he cannot, then be willing to say no to that thing.
Yep.
This was really convicting and encouraging episode, I think, for both Kelsey and I. And we both are in busy seasons at different times during the year.
Yes.
But hope that
Always.
this discussion today of us sharing our struggles and how we kind of navigate through this, or recalibrate our hearts, recalibrate our minds, even recalibrating our calendars in some of these ways can help you. But we really appreciate the time that you guys have taken with us today, and we love you so much. And Kelsey, do you want to do a get to know question today?
I know. I was going to ask you that if you had any on the list. Is there a list?
Let me see. I've got our list. Let me see. Sorry, I don't have it pulled up.
No, you're
right
fine.
now.
I was going to say,
should.
while you were looking at that, that's one thing. I feel like I have really sweet, encouraging friends who say things all the time. They're like, you are so busy and I just don't know how you do it. And you always have this positive attitude and all this stuff. And every single time, my answer to that truly is, it's not me. It's Jesus. It's because I have that time with him every day, and that he is the one that is leading me and helping me feel joyful. But that still doesn't mean that I do that perfectly, or that I don't have moments. Like I told you guys when I was telling my husband a few weeks ago, like, this is a lot. Everything is too much. It's too much. So all of that to say that we're all human, and
right.
we all struggle with this.
Well, and I had a friend the other day, real quick before we jump, she was just saying, I feel like I walk in a room and I see something that needs to be done. So either this is how the day goes, one of two ways. Either I spend 15 minutes on that, I get interrupted or distracted, move to a different room, see a new problem, do 15 minutes on that problem. And then by the end of the day, there's traces of all these little things that I've touched, but nothing is done. And I feel defeated. Or I get fixated on that one room, spend hours on that one room, nothing else gets done. And then I end the day and go, oh my goodness, I finished that. But now all this other stuff. And so she's just like, I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know what to do. And I reminded her of what we talked about. Like, are you discipling your children? Are you talking about the Lord? She's like, absolutely. I'm like, okay, well, number one, that's good. Like, that's what and I was like, next thing, I was like, sometimes what I do is, like, if dishes need to be done, I set a timer, and I literally for 15 minutes will go as hard as I can. And when that timer goes up, and whether the dishes are cleaned out of the sink or the dishwasher is empty or reloaded, I walk away. And it's like, at least I did something in that area that'll better me for later in the day or tomorrow or whatever. And so I was like, maybe if you have little margins in your day, little pockets, then you will have these small wins that help you not feel so overwhelmed and not make you
Mhm.
give up on what to do. And, but
Mm,
start small. So I don't know. That's something I just shared with her. And she was
I
like, that's
love
really
that.
helpful.
I love that. That's so sweet. Okay, so we've got a question. What is a small, ordinary moment that feels like pure joy to you? Mm. Well, I feel like the first thought that popped into my head was my kids. So I would say with both of them, it's so different. But those are, I feel like just being with them, especially my oldest one loves to read books and she likes to read to both me and my youngest. And so anytime we're able to just cuddle up together and read, and it always ends up being very giggly and sweet.
Hmm.
Um, that definitely would be just pure joy. And another one is worship time with them,
Mm.
and just with my family as a whole. I don't know about y'all, but anytime I see my husband worshiping the Lord, I'm like, I love seeing that.
Yep. Yep.
It's a very
Yep.
attractive thing.
Yes.
But anyways, we were even yesterday, like, because we try to do worship time at home every night when we do our devotion together, and it really is always just such a sweet time. But I feel like I got to see the fruit of that yesterday. We took Quinn into the big service for the Good Friday service, and she was just raising her hands and singing. And
Cutie.
I looked over at Logan, and her eyes were closed, and she was singing, and she had both of her hands just raised. And I was like, I just wanted to just cry because it was just so sweet
Mm.
and just a pure, joyful moment. So,
I love
okay.
that.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say mine's related to my family as well. So, a small, ordinary moment that feels like pure joy when it's late afternoon, especially during the year right now, where there's not a lot of mosquitoes and you can be outside for a while and live,
Yes.
comfortably. We'll just be in the backyard. And like, I've got one kid swinging, I've got two kids playing chase or hide and seek. I have, my husband playing ball or, doing some sort of sport with one or two of them or all of them. And then we let our chickens out in the afternoons. And it's just like my chickens are running around and following me like I'm the mama hen. And, my kids are coming up to me. And so like, it's just, I don't know, like I could get a chair and have for real, like a glass of sweet tea and sit there and just like soak it all in with the sun
Mhm.
setting and just being in our backyard and just simple, just time together. And I feel like that is truly when um, I have a lot of joy, pure joy in just a small, ordinary moment of just being outside, just, watching all of that and observing all of that and
Mm.
being a part of it and just thankful.
That's so sweet. I feel like whoever is listening, you guys really think about and reflect on that, because I feel like that just gave me a little warm, happy in my heart thinking
Mm-hmm.
thinking through all the pure joy moments. But we are so thankful you guys were with us today. We love y'all, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.